MBA application essays are undoubtedly the most critical part of any application. It's important to have a great CV, it's important to have fantastic references backing you up. All of those things make a difference, but if your essays don't hit the mark, it's going to be very difficult to find yourself getting business school interviews. So what advice do we give for writing effective essays? I think first things first, you've got to study the question. I think the biggest mistake I see in first drafts is when you get interesting answers, but they're not related to what's truly been asked. And so I think here, this is where working with your coach is so important, and working with other people who have been through the application process themselves is important as well, is to ask, when they ask this, what are they really asking? You know, like, what's the underlying part of this question? And let's take some of the most typical questions you see for business schools. You'll see things like, why an MBA at this time of your life? Why do you want to study an MBA here? You'll see people or business schools asking, what are your career goals? You know, and how is the MBA going to help you get there? You're going to see some questions as simple as the Stanford one, like, why Stanford? Okay. You've got the blank sheet one of Harvard. You've got MIT that has a 300-word cover letter. Okay. The key thing is to study all of the questions and say, okay, what are they truly getting at? And something I've identified from experience is actually universities are typically interested in just 5 things. One of them is, what is your motivation? Like, what is your why in life? Business schools want to know, like, what is it that motivates you? What drives you? What gets you out of bed? Like, what's that spark inside you that is going to make you someone who's going to strive for success in everything that they do? The second thing they want to know is, who are you? You know, so if I was coaching the other coach, James, for an application, I would ask him, okay, who is James the professional, but who is James the person? Okay, and so we look at, as a professional, things that somebody's achieved, people's highlights in their career, what progression they've had, what do they do now, okay? Those are the things we want to know, and universities are interested in, and that will come through with your essays and with your CV, okay? But they're also looking to know who you are as a person. What do you stand for? Like, what values do you have, and what value are you going to bring to the school, you know? What kind of person are they going to be getting as part of their cohort? Okay, so I think they're probably 2 of the most important. But then there's 3 other elements that business schools are very interested in. One of those elements is what your vision is for the future. And what I mean by that is not a goal necessarily, but what are you seeing happening in your sphere, in your world? It may be the industry you're in or the country you're in. What are some of the big challenges that are opportunities? And I think a lot of schools are keen to know is, do you have a good idea of what's going on around you? Do you have an idea of where the market's moving and what the opportunities and challenges are that need to be resolved? And so it's kind of like the big picture, so to say. And so that will then help the schools with the 4th thing they want to know, which is obviously very closely connected to that, is what are your personal goals? And so I encourage candidates to do 3 things, is to map out goals for what I call short term, which would be the first 1 or 2 years post MBA. So imagine you graduated from an MBA, what are you going to do in those first 2 years? What type of company are you going to work in? What type of position are you going to want to take? Okay. Then medium term, which I'd say is 2 to 5 years post MBA. So once you've completed that initial goal post university, post MBA, what are you then going to do in terms of accelerating your career? Where do you see it going? And then long term, 5 years onwards. And I understand this can be really challenging for some people. I mean, crikey, I'm 40 now. I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 5 years. I've got a feeling it will be connected to Tide Changer, but in what capacity? You know, will I be fully as a CEO and doing nothing else other than running the business from a strategic point of view, or am I still going to be involved working with clients? Nobody really knows. So I have a lot of empathy for that part of the process. But you've got to do the best you can defining what it is that you really want to do. Because I believe that a lot of universities and business schools want to be clear that you're going to be a productive candidate post-MBA, that you're going to go and work somewhere, because it all contributes to their statistics in terms of post-MBA salaries and number of or percentage of people who get offered jobs. And then going to the fifth thing I think that universities want to know is, why them? Quite simply. And that goes well beyond telling a business school that they're prestigious. MIT knows it's prestigious. London Business School knows it has a great reputation. It doesn't need to hear that. And so by thinking back to your goals and your big picture vision, you can really identify what are the elements of the MBA that you're going to benefit the most from, which are the ones that are going to help you get to your goals. And so I think about their specific classes, specific teachers, and I'm always keen to say, don't just name drop for the sake of it. But if you go to Chicago Booth and you're interested in behavioural economics, you do have the opportunity to meet someone like Richard Thaler. So there is some wisdom in looking at the teachers you may be working with. But also look at clubs and societies you can be involved in, both ones related to your career and those related to your passions. I've worked with a candidate in the past who one of his main passions was baking bread. I mean, he's baked about 2,000 different loaves of sourdough, and he's now going to Chicago Booth, and one of the key things he was looking to do was integrate there with the food community, like thinking, how can I create something with my interest in business and my interest in creating bread. Okay, so if you can define those 5 things, I think you've got a good start for some great essays. And then all of this can be told with a story, and that's a whole different topic that I can talk about at some other point, but the best MBA essays I've seen are typically ones that sell things for a story, sell things through action, as opposed to just listing cliches and achievements. The optional essay, every year I find myself in debates with people about that, and it's always an interesting one. People ask, do I need to do it, do I not? And I think my answer has always been quite simple. If an optional essay is something as simple as, tell us about yourself. Okay, so I take London Business School as a good example. The second question is essentially, is there anything else you think we need to know? 100% do that essay. Okay, because at the end of the day, that's what I call like a blank sheet optional that really gives you a chance to answer it in a variety of creative ways that can make you stand out. But if there's an optional essay which is more related to explaining gaps in your CV or poor academic performance or extenuating circumstances, I only recommend filling that out when there is something genuine to tell. So I worked with someone who was out for at least a year from the workplace due to health issues. And so it made sense to explain that gap in the CV because it was important for the university to see why that person had a career break. But what I never suggest using it for is to explain away poor test performance. Let's imagine that you've taken the GMAT 4 times and you've only managed to get 580 as your top score. I personally don't believe that university and business school admissions departments are going to buy into, oh, I was too busy with work, that's why I couldn't get a higher GRE or GMAT score, So I think if you've got something genuine to share, answer it, put it there, okay, use it as that opportunity to explain it, but don't use it for something that's not really true. And also, don't use it as an additional opportunity to sell something else in your profile that you couldn't fit in your other essays, because I know that that's definitely frowned upon by a lot of business school admissions teams.